Okay, we are at the end of Bava Kamma. We did 13 shiurim in Bava Kamma. Bezat Hashem, next week we'll start Bava Metzia. We don't do every single midrash, but we try to do the major ones. And this week we'll actually be doing the very, very end of Bava Kamma, the very last piska. Now, there's this general idea that Masechtot, usually they end with, even if they're dealing with something that's very technical and halachic, they'll end with some nice Haggadik idea that has a positive, the most famous example maybe is Makot with Rabbi Akiva and the fox and Akiva Nichamtanu. There's a lot of Masechtot that end like that.
So that Basiyum, everyone thinks that it was fun and easy.
Exactly, right, exactly. Good. So, Bava Kamma does not seem to end that way. It seems to end with as mundane and halachic and dry of an idea as possible. Yet the Ein Yaakov includes it. The Ein Yaakov is including usually just Agarata from the Talmud. So the question is why? So we're going to see a suggestion of the Ben Yoyada and then a suggestion of the Ein Yaakov, which will take us on a tangent into a whole series of midrashim about actually Moshe Rabbeinu and the Luchot, and when he carved the Luchot. There was Psal Lecha Shnei Luchot Avanim, so there was something very unique about that process that the Midrash dives into, and then I have a bit of a kind of an idea at the end of it about different versions of that Midrash that were developed perhaps at different times. They might be trying to say slightly different things. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Okay, so let's begin. Masechah Bava Kamma ends as follows. Tanu Rabbanan. Mesatetei avanim ein behem mishum gazel. Okay, let's say you have people who chip away at rocks, where their business is about setting up, rock foundations, and as part of that, they have to carve the rocks to fit a certain shape. So there are, pieces of rock or chips that fall apart as part of that. So if the workers take that, it's not considered stealing.
Making the square box into something.
Exactly. Anyone who carves off the edges of the pizza box, that would not be considered.
Something more deep here is the whole concept of the stonemasons, but you can.
All right, we'll get
take it from there.
We'll get to the deep stuff. Yeah, we'll get to the deep state, the conspiracy theories. Yeah, okay. But right now, at least on the surface level, this seems to be very welcome. It seems to be just in the realm of theft and stealing, which is what Bava Kamma deals with at this point in the Masechta. Let's share.
Share that.
Okay.
Yeah, I opened it up already on there.
Okay, good. So we actually just started. Until now, we've just been battling and gave a quick intro to the shir, so you didn't miss much. Okay, first source, Tanu Rabbanan. Mesatetei avanim ein behem mishum gazel. That if you are dealing with people who carve stones or are stone chippers, so the pieces of stone that are left behind after they carve it into a certain shape, it's not considered stealing if they take it. The assumption being that the person who hired them doesn't care about those extra flakes of stone, so they're allowed to take it. Mefasgei ilanot, mefasgei gfanim, menakfei hige, menakshei zra'im, ve'odrei yirakot, b'zman שבעל הבית מפקיד עליהם, יש בהם משום גזל, אין בעל הבית מפקיד עליהם, הרי אלו שלו. Okay, so there are all these different types of, handyman type jobs. About dealing with the vegetables and different types of seeds. The idea being that there's things that are left over as part of the work, weeds or what have you. Unneeded residue. Yeah. So if the owner is particular about those things and says, "This is my garden, I want those residues," so then the worker's not allowed to take it. If the owner says, "Okay, whatever, I don't really care about them," fairly straightforward.
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Perfect. That's a great summary of this. That should be the title of the shir, except it's in Aramaic, but otherwise. Okay, and then Amar Rav Yehuda, Keshut v'chaziz ein behem mishum gazel. Okay, these are two specific types of plants that it's not considered gazel if someone takes them, because they're these, I don't remember how they translate, but they're things that nobody really wants. They're almost kind of weeds that are left behind. So if someone takes them, it's not considered theft. באתרא דקפדי יש בהם משום גזל. Okay, similar to what we just saw, but in a place where people are particular about those two types of plants, so then it is considered theft. And then the Masechta Bava Kamma finishes. Amar Ravina umata mechsaya atro dekaptehu. Right, that was a place in Bavel, so that's a place where people are particular. So the assumption being that in that place you can't just take sud v'chaziz, because in that place people are particular, and in a place where people are particular, it's considered theft. Okay. So again, as we said in the introduction, usually Masechtot end with some nice positive message, so that people think that it was fun to learn the Masechet. They forget all the hardship along the way. What about this seems to inspire a deeper idea? So the Ben Yehoyada develops one way to understand it. So he says, Nira le b'siyata dishmaya, remez lefi darko al hadibur, asher bara Hashem yitbarach koach hadibur, letzorech Torah utfilah. Okay, so Hashem created the power of speech. Men have the power to speak. And the purpose of that is for Kedusha. It's to learn, it's to teach Torah, it's to pray. V'chol davar sheyach la'avodato yitbarach. V'lachen ha'medaber dvarim betelim, harei ze gozel l'sitra d'kedusha. So the Ben Yehoyada had a bit of a Kabbalistic, Hasidic bend. So he said, a person who speaks things that are batel, right, that are not used for Kedusha, it's as though he's stealing from the holiness of that koach, shekoach hadibur netano HaKadosh Baruch Hu, be'adam letzorech sitra d'kedusha. Right, we were given the gift of speech, ruach memalala, and if we use our speech, no, he's not saying here for sin or lashon hara. He's just saying dvarim betelim, right? Normal speech that's considered stealing from the koach that was given to us as a gift. אמנם ידוע שיש בדיבור מיני דיבור שאף על פי שאינם בקדושה, עם כל זה אדם מותר בהם. There are certain types of speech that even though they're not directly for holiness, but you're allowed to say them. והוא דיבור שידבר האדם בצורכי גופו, הן במלאכה, הן במשא ומתן. Right? So if you're in business and you need to speak as part of your parnasa, so even though what you're saying isn't directly related to Torah, to Tefillah, obviously it's permissible. הן במה דשייך לבריאתו. Or things that have to do with your health. Sometimes you need to speak in order to get medicine, whatever it is, right? There are things that you need to say that are permissible. V'od min dibur, a second category, she'eno b'divrei Torah tefillah v'inyan kedusha, ki im b'hanhaga v'derech eretz, gam ze mutar bo. Okay, so also just in general, there are things that you need to speak just in terms to, as just a way to live in the world, in a way that's respectful and as just a way of existing. That's permissible, right? It doesn't mean the only things you're ever allowed to say are Torah Tefillah. There are things that, even though they're chol, they're permitted. So remember, Rabbi Yehuda said kshut and chaziz. So kshut ze dibur shemasau matanu melacha v'chayotze. Okay, so kshut. He doesn't make the linguistic connection, so I'm not sure why he says that, but he says kshut here is a metaphor or a symbolic of this speech that has to do with making a living. V'chaziz hadibur she'anagav v'derech eretz. And chaziz, that second type of plant, is speech just having to kind of make your way through the world. So what does the Gemara say? When it comes to kshut v'chaziz, ein bahem mishum gezel. It's not considered theft, because how did the Ben Yehoyada introduce this? Even though they're not Torah or Tefillah, and we said anything that's not Torah Tefillah, and the power of our speech, it's theft from the gift that God gave us to use that in a different way. Because they're permitted, so it's not considered theft.
It reminds me of the comparison between the Talmidim of Avraham Avinu and the Talmidim of Bilam. The whole concept. So in Bilam, in Avraham it says Emor me'at ve'aseh arbe. In other words, don't waste any words regardless. I think you think of it, and if you think of Bilam as a representative of the, let's call it the Sitra Achra for that matter,
right?
They're words that have power, if you like, outside that realm. So I think it's something that one needs to pay attention to. Yeah, so you have like the good side, and you have the middle ground, and you have the other side. So I think if you bring that up as, but interesting that he compares it to waste or stuff that one does not.
Gesem, exactly. Gesem. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's just sometimes like one man's treasure, another man's treasure. Gesem isn't necessarily bad, but absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's just, as a broader point, I don't want to go on this tangent, so I shouldn't bring it up. But there's something I thought about this recently. Right, that in the more like Chabad Hasidic like way of looking at the world, it's binary. Things are either kadosh or they're not. There's no middle ground. In modern Orthodoxy, it's like 99% of our lives is neutral. It's like. You have those moments in your life where you're davening. You have those moments where you're doing acts of chesed. Then you shouldn't do various averot, but most of our lives is considered just I'm playing basketball, I'm going to the movies, and I'm just And in more Hasidic thought, it's like those things are either being done with Soch Kedusha or they fall into the category of the Sitra Achra. It's a very different approach to kind of... Right, whatever. Klippa's noga, but that in and of itself goes one way or the other.
Right, it goes one way or the other.
I don't know if actually... Whatever. Anyway, it's not for now. But it's... yeah. So, okay. So that's the first layer. These things are not considered theft. Miu, how does the Gemara continue? Be'atr Dekapdi yesh behem mishum gezel. Remember, so we said these things are not considered theft unless it's a place where people are particular about these things. So what does that mean? Nired atr Dekapdi hu beit midrash. Because the Beis Medrash, the kapte ledaber dibur chitzoni mipnei bitul beit midrash. Because in the Beit Midrash, they're more particular not to speak about your work, not to speak about worldly matters. Kedamrina megmara, as it says, you're not allowed to talk about medicine in the Beit Midrash or medical things because it's considered a waste compared to the Torah that should be learned there. Okay. So he defines the Beit Midrash as a place where people are particular. And what's interesting about this is, after the Kapte, the Gemara doesn't say one way or the other in the context of the Baal Habayit, but it has an implication perhaps of negative. People, okay, if people are particular about the weeds in their garden, so fine, they get to keep it, it's considered theft. But it's like, is that really an admirable thing? So here he's taking it and saying, no, it's people who are kapte in terms of their speech, that it should be speech of holiness, and that's a good thing. במיני דיבורים הנזכר שהמשא ומתן המלאכה או של ההנהגה בדרך ארץ יש בהם משום גזל. וגוזל בזה סיטרה קדושה. Because there this is a world of kedusha inside the four walls of the Beit HaMidrash. Ve'amar Ravina, and then has the Masech to finish. Ravina says, Mata machasi atu dekaptehu. So this place, the city of Machseya, was a place where people were particular. So, right, that was a historical place in Bavel, but how does Ben Yehuda understand it? Perush, Mishu Talmid Chacham, Asher Torato Umanutto, ולכן קוראו מטה מחסיה, כי הגוף קראו בקהלת בשם עיר, כדכתיב עיר קטנה ואנשים בה מעט. So, the body is called a city in Kohelet, right? And also Baal Tanya uses that a lot.
The body is in a city.
It's a metaphor. The body is compared to a city.
The body lives in a city.
Right. The body lives in the city. You're absolutely right. But there's also a metaphor comparing the body to a city.
Maybe it's a city for germs.
You have the Amorah, it says, Nehirim lishvile de Nehardea kishvile de Rakia. The whole...
for your microbiome, it's a city.
Yeah. Right. That's right, yeah. So if the body is considered like a city for germs, the guf shel tamid chacham bezeh shetorato umanuto, and you're talking about a Torah scholar where Torah is his profession, nikra, a city of Machasya. Why? So the city of Machasya, Mechasea, שהוא מיוחס ומסוים יותר מכל הגופים, גם הוא מכסה ומגן על כל העולם, שמגן זכותו על העולם. So Mata, Mechasya, is considered the city of protection, of refuge for the world. It's a metaphor for a Torah scholar. And therefore, Hine, Zenikra, Atu Dekapte. So, Mata Mechasya, Atu Dekaptehu. That means that Torah scholars always are particular about their Koach HaDibur. Right? Hen bebeit HaMidrash, hen outside of the Beit HaMidrash. HaDibur b'chol makom shia, hen b'shivato Beit HaMidrash, hen b'shivato b'beito. In his house, the kapit shelo ledaber davar chitzoni, lachen ein osach sichat chulin. So Torah scholar never says words of chulin, even in a case where you would say that it would be totally permissible for a non-Torah scholar to say those things. Ein by mishum gazel, but after the kapta yesh by mishum gazel, so you can talk about your work or the latest Knicks game or whatever it is outside in a normal or latest sports game, but not inside the Beit Midrash, and a Torah scholar never talks about those things at all. So that's how the Ben Yehuda reads these last few phrases of Masechet Bava Kamma. I think it's an ingenious kind of rereading of it. Okay, we'll see now. It's not pshat, but like we introduced, this is the end of the Masechet, and the Ein Yaakov includes it, so there is some deeper something here.
What could we learn from it?
Yeah, but yes, pshat is halachic purely. I wanted to fit this on 2 pages, but that meant that I made this in Iyun Yaakov essentially unreadable. So I apologize. So maybe we'll do that.
Yeah.
I can read it.
Okay, here, you take a look. Maybe someone else give me the phone.
It's,
All right, thank you. Sorry. Okay, so the Iyun Yaakov says, Tanu Rabbanan. Okay. נראה דעתי לומר שלא תמה אי אמרינן מסתתי אבנים, אין בזה משום גזל. אם כן, המאיץ צריך התורה לומר, פסול לך, הפסולת יהיה שלך. It says, how does this whole thing get introduced? And this is going to be the springboard for the rest of the shiur. That those who chip away at stones, it's not considered gezel if they take the remainders of that chippage for themselves. So the Ibn Yaakov says, so there's a midrash that says, when Moshe Rabbeinu was told, Psol lecha, you have to carve the luchot for yourself. So the midrash says, Psol lecha, carve it for you. So the psolet tiyeh shelcha, the leftover remains of the luchot will be for you.
Something, yeah.
Okay?
All right.
So he says, Ha hadin pashut. Why do I need the medrash to tell me that Hashem said to Moshe, Psol lecha, you get to keep the leftover parts of the stone that you use to chip the luchot? We just learned here, Mesatete avanim en by mishum gazel. The person who's chipping away at stones gets to keep the chips. So what's the chiddush of psolet tiyeh shelcha?
Okay.
Yeah, hold on.
All right.
Kach bechol mesatete avanim. That's the halacha. So what's the chiddush of the midrash by Moshe Rabbeinu? Le'achi kamar, bizman she'ba'al habayit makpid aleihem yesh ben mishum gezel. If the Baal habayit is particular, then it is considered theft. Who's the Baal habayit of the luchot in this case? So he says, yesh ben mishum gezel v'im ken b'davar chashuv kmo avanim tovot. Right, something that's chashuv hayu Yisrael makpidin. Because the luchot really belonged to Bnei Yisrael. And Bnei Yisrael surely wouldn't have been okay with Moshe Rabbeinu just taking the chips. Therefore, this halacha would not have given Moshe Rabbeinu the right to the chips. Therefore, brilliant connection between this and this other midrash.
I think there's something deeper, because if you think of it, what they're want to create is the body of the main body of knowledge.
Yeah.
Whatever's chipped away is the esoteric knowledge. In other words, there's some stuff that you would think that you can just cast away, but they're still needed. There's some stuff that you would even think that whoever really understands the main body of knowledge would obviously tend to try to expand and go to the esoteric and see what they can get from there.
Very
now,
good.
Speaking of which, the whole concept of the stonemasons, that this is something deep. You think of where different people took that idea to. I think it's obviously without getting into the Freemasonry and whatever, but I think you have a lot of areas where people seek the esoteric knowledge, and dwelling to that, and this is something. So you would think, what business do I have dealing with anything beyond the main body of knowledge? Mm-hmm. But obviously, once you're filled with the main body of knowledge, you want to start branching out. So I think the whole concept of not leaving the esoteric knowledge behind is something that's
very good. Mm-hmm. I agree. This midrash has a lot to it. I mean, the idea of Moshe keeping the part of the luchot that didn't make it into. You could even just take it to Torah Shebechtav and Torah Sheba'al Peh, perhaps,
or
not even esoteric.
Or the whole concept of Baldes, the Pshat Rash,
right.
Is
right. The stuff outside of the 10 Commandments written, carved into the stone, is all the misaviv. Absolutely. So what's interesting is we're going to see now.
So then,
go ahead.
If so, then it's esoteric knowledge, right? Moshe wants it for himself, or Moshe wants it, not necessarily for himself, but Moshe wants it. And Bnei Yisrael wouldn't be okay with Moshe taking it and them not having it, unless Hashem gave him explicit permission.
So a way to understand it, to piggyback off of what Nathaniel said, is perhaps there's certain knowledge that only the elites are allowed to have.
Yeah.
That Bnei Yisrael would, in theory, want Kabbalah, or things that are, right, the Mishnah Chagiga talks about, you just, teach in the presence of one or two. But Hashem said, Apsol Diyah Shilcha. This is something that only the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generations allowed to have.
Follow the whole concept,
Even if Bnei Yisrael are makpid on it.
מסכת אבות, משה קיבל תורה מסיני ומסרה ליהושע, יהושע לזקנים וכולי. There is something that's passed to the select few.
Yeah. That is one way to understand this, I think. Yeah. Very good. So we'll see now the Gemara takes it in a different direction. I wouldn't say different, in a complementary direction, but a different one, but not a contradictory direction. The Gemara Nedarim on Daf Lamed Chet says as follows: Amir Rabbi Kamma Rabbi Chanina, Lo ha'eshir Moshe ela b'psoltan shel luchot. Moshe Rabbeinu became rich, wealthy, from the leftovers of the luchot. Shneimar psolacha shnei luchot avnim karishanim sultan shelcha yehei. You get the psolet. Why does that make him rich? We'll see that in a minute. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Good. We'll get to it. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Actually, before we get to the next part, what did the luchot look like?
There are two malbenim.
Two malbenim.
Sapphire stones.
Sapphire stone.
The writing is
The
like
letter
through, yeah.
Curved all the way through. And
Somehow you can't read it from both sides, but okay.
Yeah. And the mem and the samech are floating.
Yeah, floating, yeah.
What were the dimensions of the luchot?
Right. So
It's
that's
not a
what gets really
malben, it's
interesting.
Oh,
a
it was
square.
really strong.
They were cute.
The luchota was
Cute,
square.
but,
Square.
You guys know? Okay, good.
The
Everyone, you guys know.
luchota was square.
Okay, you guys know all the
We were
midrashim.
all
The
there.
round thing.
We were all there.
Right.
Yeah, we were
So,
all
so
there.
what's clear from the midrashim is it's not this, right?
It's not the famous
picture from
Michelangelo that,
yeah.
with Moshe Rabbeinu having
Or
horns.
from
but
Exodus,
okay.
the movie.
Or the movie, right? But yes, you mentioned sapphire stones. We're going to talk to it. You guys mentioned the carving. All of it. Good. So you guys know the midrashim roughly. Let's go through them to build up the case towards kind of what we're going to say at the end. So someone mentioned something about Moshe Rabbeinu being strong. Okay, so we'll see why. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashreh shchinato el al gibor ashir chacham ve'anav. Hashem only rests His Shekhinah on a person who is truly exemplary, strong, or courageous, wealthy, wise, and humble. V'kchulam b'Moshe. Moshe is the source for that. How do we know all these traits in Moshe? Gibor, tichtiv vayifros et ha'oel al mishkan. Okay, Moshe Rabbeinu spread the tent over the Mishkan. V'amar Moshe Rabbeinu paso. He himself did it. Uchtiv eser amot orech hakeresh v'gomer. That it was very big. So the Gemara rejects this and says, Ema de'arech v'katin. Just say that Moshe was very tall, but thin. In other words, he was able to reach very high up and get
How
it
high was he?
over the thing and
How
spread
high
it. But
was he?
the curtain wasn't necessarily heavy. He could do it even
What
floating
he
strong.
did vis-a-vis Og Melech HaBashan, the whole midrash that deals with that little thing there.
So it's fast. It doesn't bring that midrash here, but you're absolutely right.
All right.
Because that says Moshe Rabbeinu was 10 amod. He took an axe, it was 10 amod. He jumped 10 amod. He struck
Exactly.
it. So it doesn't mention that here, and I think this is a great source. I thought of that as well. Very, very good. But it says no. What's the source that Moshe Rabbeinu was a gibor? Elamin hadein kura dichtiv va'atpos b'shnei aluchot va'ashlichem me'al shtei yadai va'ashabrem. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to carry these luchot from the bottom of Har Sinai up to the top of Har Sinai, down to the bottom of Har Sinai. V'tanya aluchot orkan, very good. Shisha v'rochban shisha v'ovyan shlosha. So we calculated before. Right, shishat tfachim. So if you take, a tefach is roughly 10 centimeters. Yeah. I'm not getting into like chazonish level things. I'm just saying roughly 10 centimeters. So this is roughly 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters.
One for Chazonish and one for...
Right, exactly.
Agrachme.
The first luchot in the set. Why did he break them? Chazonish. The wrong dimensions. Right, okay.
And Avraham Avinu was wearing a strimal. No, yalla.
This week's parsha. Why? Vayetze Yaakov mi Be'er Sheva ve'el Harana. You think he would? You think he would go with that? Right?
Without a hat.
Yeah, without a hat. How do you know Yaakov Avinu was wearing a strap? It says Vayetze Yaakov. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Very famous one.
It's a great joke. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the luchot were 6 tfachim long, 6 tfachim. And then 3. So it's not quite a cube. It's ovyan shlosha. So it's kind of a square with slightly like half the dimensions in the teva. Good, but still, you imagine. I mean, 60 centimeters. It's big. It's not, and it's made from stone. Like forget the stone; it's bulky, and then it's made of stone. Right. So from here you learn Moshe Rabbeinu must have been very strong.
Hollow, so. But okay.
I could have picked it up easily.
Half a rock.
You think so?
Okay. I don't know. Maybe.
I could pick out the heaviest chair in our house.
There is no way you can pick
it. Chair is too heavy for him to pick.
What's our heaviest chair in our house?
The one I sit in, the blue one. You think you could pick that up?
If yes,
The one that reclines?
Nach Yisrael Alecha.
What?
Yeah. Yehi Ratzon, you should pick it up, and then you get the Shechina. Okay, very good. You understand?
I know how to pick up the one for the Shabbat table.
Yes, that's true. You are very strong. You are absolutely
That's
strong.
when you're ready for shell dog, buddy.
Okay. This guy, he wants to go to Modi'in, this guy. Actually. Yeah. Okay.
Why?
We'll see.
Modi'in, like intelligence in the army to do the computers.
Oh,
and-
yeah.
On normal times, the intelligence has first dibs on you. So even though even if you are your medical profile is combat ready.
Akitzer, so let's just finish the traits that Moshe Rabbeinu had. Ashir, psol lecha, psoltan shelcha yeheh. Okay, this is what we just had. How was Moshe wealthy? He was wealthy from the leftovers of the luchot. We'll discuss it more soon. Notice the Gemara in Nedarim doesn't explain why the
About
psolet
5
would have made
minutes
him healthy.
and
Okay, we'll go a little bit over tonight. Chacham.
25 seconds.
How do we know that? How do we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was wise? It's kind of a silly question to ask, but Rav Shmuel Damei Tarvayu, 50 שערי בינה נבראו העולם, וכולם ניתנו למשה חסר אחד, שנאמר ותחסרהו מעט מאלוקים. Okay? He had 49 gates of wisdom. ועניו, how do we know Moshe Rabbeinu was עניו? Obvious, דכתיב, האיש משה עניו מאוד. Okay, אמר רבי יוחנן, כל הנביאים עשירים היו. This is actually an interesting teaching, because I would have thought, in general, like, that Hashem would be mashre shchinato, specifically maybe on the poor or on the downtrodden. No, all the Nevi'im were wealthy. Minalan, mi Moshe u'mishmuel me'amos u'miyona. Okay, Moshe dichtiv lo chamor echad me'em nasati. Right, in the discussion with Korach, right, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I never stole anything. Was it Korach? I never stole anything from you, not even a donkey. So we say, I bela agra lafuke man deshake bela agra. So if he says, if Moshe Rabbeinu says, I never stole anything, and he's referring to something that was without payment, so then what's the chiddush? In other words, okay, he took something that was for free, so there's nothing great about that, right? Ella dafilu balgra. It means he's saying that I didn't take something that I should have paid for, right? So that means that he must have been dilma mishum de'aniya, but maybe it's because he was too poor to pay for the donkey. It's not that he was so wealthy he didn't need to take it; it was that he was too poor to afford it. So Ella means solachab sultan yehei shelcha. Right here too, we go back to the idea that he got the leftovers of the luchot. Now, why did the leftovers of the luchot make him wealthy? This is what David Moshe said before. Vayikor Rabba tells us. Nedarim does not. Vayikor Rabba says, "V'chadrei mishkavcha al tekalel ashir." It's a pasuk from Kohelet. Right, you shouldn't even curse a rich person, even in your inner chambers. So this is Moshe. How do we know? Mehechan he'ashir Moshe. Amar Rabbi Chanin, machzav shel sanpirinon, bara lo kadosh baruch hu betoch ohalo umisham he'ashir. So a mine of sapphire stones was created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Moshe Rabbeinu's tent. And from there he became wealthy. Why? In other words, the luchot, the psukim don't say, he says, where did that stone, it wasn't just some rock that he found on the side in the desert. Hashem created this mine in his tent of sapphire precious stones, and those are what he used to carve the luchot. Since the luchot had to be perfectly square, so these stones were not perfectly square, he had to carve off edges. He got to keep that leftover sapphire pieces, and sapphire stone is very, very precious, very expensive, very wealthy. Moshe Rabbeinu could then go and sell that. That's how he became wealthy.
Well, two things you need to remember. Number one, his staff was made out of sapphire. Okay?
Okay.
Let's remember that. Moses' staff, we get
But he had that staff before his oil.
Yes, but that's one of the 10 things that were created bin hashmashot, by the way.
Okay.
So you remember. This is an interesting thing. So you have his staff itself, which is...
And what else is mutar bein hashmashot? No, esoteric learning.
Well, they say that the donkey of
Bilam.
Bilam. There's a whole list, but
The first tongs also.
Yeah.
Because you need tongs to make tongs.
Right.
So I always wondered about
tank?
cranes. Don't you need a crane to make a crane? Who made the first crane? Remember? We used to think about that.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
You need a hammer to make a hammer.
Someone made it with their hands.
Yes.
So so there's that, but I think that you think of the carving. So Moshe carved it out, or did
Moshe carved the
frame,
shape,
the shape.
and HaKadosh Baruch Hu carved the actual words.
It's interesting. So he used. Think of today. You have diamond drills. Okay. For in the industrial world, yes. So you have so diamond is the strongest. I think if I recall correctly, again, I'm not expert in the field, but I think sapphire is one of the closest thing to the diamond as far as its strength.
Okay.
So
I don't know.
He's carving. I looked it up once. So I think it's like a second or a third as far as the precious stones out there, as far as their strength. So use that for carving something. Just think of it that way. He used sapphire to carve the stones.
Just sapphire.
It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's just think of it that way, and so you know.
So it's interesting you mentioned before you tied it to the staff which created Ben Hashmashot, because you see here it says Baralo HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Yeah.
And Hashem created this mine of sapphire stones. So bara is this language of like yesh me'ayin, right? But I didn't bring it here, but I saw a parallel of this Vaikarab in the Yerushalmi, where it's word for word identical, except instead of bara, it says Gilalo HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I thought, the surface level is saying the same thing, it's just a different verb. I thought, bara is Hashem created this mine of sapphire stones, like miuad for this task.
No, but
Already from Maaseh Bereshit to create the stones.
But also-
It was there, and he showed him where it was.
Hashem is creating a mine of sapphire stone. Why not just create the luchot? Like, why Davka create just the mine and then force Moshe to carve it?
So that's because there's value in him being mitasek and making it. What?
Right, because he wants the
Mishum
soul.
Mitzvah.
Moshe has to be
Hashem wants
mitasek
Torah.
in this concept, but then also he wants Moshe to benefit.
Right.
Like this whole process, Hashem is very careful about.
Which I think is what's really motivating this midrash. To your point is like why did Moshe have to cover luchot? Exactly the question you asked is because so the psos yesh shelcha that he gets benefit from it. Yeah. But you see it.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry. go ahead.
It's not just like, there happens to be psolat, you can have it.
Right.
Like, no. This is all the kavanah.
Yeah, very good. We started touching about reasons behind the esoteric knowledge and all that, but I think to piggyback on what Rav Natan just said just now. Rav Natan, Nate,
Just Nate.
all right, Nate. Okay, oh, fine, Shlita. Anyways, so you have the Eitz Yosef in his commentary on this midrash. So he says apsolet. We'll just skip to that. He says perush ma. שתכרות סביב כדי לרבע ולהעמידן על 6 טפחים, right? It means you have to carve it so that it's a perfect square. יהיה שלך, you get those chips. שלהיות עיקר שורשו של משה בתורה שבלוחות, that since the whole essence of Moshe Rabbeinu was about the Torah of the Luchot, that was who he was, that was his whole identity, לכן נמשך לו ממנה גם כן עושר ממון. כי אפילו בשמאלה עושר וכבוד, כל שכן במנה, right? The idea being, it's like you said, b'chavana, but it's more than that. It's not just that the reason why he had to carve it and to get the psolet was for Moshe's own benefit. It's that Moshe Rabbeinu's whole identity was about Torah. So he needed to become wealthy from that because he was mitasek in that with his whole being. So he had to get osher from that. And we'll see now other midrashim. And this is where I want to give my chidush at the end. Like I'm going to see quickly, Shemot Rabbah gives a different angle to that. But just quickly, let's just go through the other versions of this. Kohelet Rabbah, it says as follows: V'gam lo nivonim. What?
Can I get my nails?
Yeah, go ahead. V'gam lo nivonim osher. So Kohelet is saying all these things about how the world is unfair and unjust, and the wise don't get to keep their wealth. Okay. So Zem Moshe, what does that mean? Mehechan bala osher v'esher. How did he become wealthy? Amar b'chanim machzav shesapir gila. Oh, sorry, the gila is also here in Kohelet Rabbah, not just in the Yerushalmi. Gila lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'toch ha'olo u'matzah. Misham esher Moshe shnamar psal lecha psaltan yitei shelcha. V'ayom kol adin oter lo kamle. So it's saying gam lo nevunim osher. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, who became wealthy from the psal of the luchot, when he died, that was the end of his wealth. He didn't get to carry it with him to his olam haba. Okay, so that's what Kohelet is saying there. But we see the same idea of the Midrash. And the Tanchumi Yelamdeinu says, Psol lecha, shetei psolet shelcha. Rabbi Levi, Rabbi Yochanan omer, mehechan psalan. So here it says explicitly, the Tanchuma, just as a general rule, as we've been learning Midrashim, it's a lot of times the Tanchuma is a later midrashic work. And sometimes it asks explicitly, or it says explicitly, things that are implied in earlier versions, like in the Midrash Rabbah. So this is an example, right? It says, where did Moshe carve them from? Notice the question, he just sold from this random rock on the side of the road. So that's what it's coming to explain, right? So Echad Omer, mitachat kisei hakavod b'salan. So one opinion is that Moshe Rabbeinu, he carved the luchot from some kind of stone that was underneath the kisei hakavod. ואחד אומר, מתוך אוהלו ברא לו מחצב, ומשם חצב שתי לוחות אבנים, ונטל מן הפסולת, ומשם העשיר, שהיו של סנפירינו. Okay? So here it just records a machloket about another potential source for the luchot, other than what we've been learning. And now I want to kind of conclude with this version of the Midrash in Shemot Rabbah, which adds another layer to this. And then I want to kind of maybe give a theory behind what's going on. Davar acher, Et lashlich avanim, right? Also, it's commenting on Kohelet, right? That you have a time to throw stones. Vaychar af Moshe vayishlech miyadav. What's the time to throw stones? Sometimes you have to throw the luchot, yashir kol chashibata. Veit knos avanim. Sometimes you have to gather in stones. Psolecha, psolet shelcha, misham yashir Moshe. And now it doesn't talk about the sapphire thing. How did Moshe get wealthy from? Right? This whole time we said the Gemara in the Nedarim said he got wealthy from the luchot. We said, how did he get wealthy? Oh, because they were made of sapphire. Midrash made of sapphire, sapphirus, napirion, okay? Shemot Rabbah says, that's not why he got wealthy from the luchot. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, din hu shitol otan psolet Moshe. Moshe deserves the psolet. Why? Lama. Ela, Yisrael shelo nit'asku b'mitzvot. Natati lehen kol tuv eretz Mitzrayim. Shnemar, v'asher natan et chen ha'am ve'eshiru. When Bnei Yisrael left Egypt, so after Makat Bechorot, so they went to the Mitzrayim, Vayinatzlu et Mitzrayim. They took Kesef, Zahav, Smalot, they took all the wealth from Mitzrayim and they left with it, right? And then there's a Gemara in Sanhedrin which says they were entitled to that money because of all the hundreds of years of slavery, right? That they hadn't been paid. So it's not that they stole it, but they still went and they took all of that wealth. What was Moshe Rabbeinu doing that night of Makat Bechorot when all of Bnei Yisrael were going and getting wealth from the Mitzrayim? Moshe she'asak b'atzmotav shel Yosef. He was getting Yosef's body to fulfill the promise, Ki yashbei b'nei Yisrael lemor, v'kol yifkod Elohim etchem alatem et atzmotam yizeh etchem. He didn't go collect wealth from the Mitzrayim, even though there was chen ha'am. So Hashem says, can it be Moshe Rabbeinu that at the time Bnei Yisrael were going and getting the money they were entitled to? Ein po mishum gazel. It wasn't theft. They were entitled. The Mitzrayim were not being kaptanim about their wealth. They wanted to give it to Bnei Yisrael. But still, even in that case, Moshe Rabbeinu, he's going and dealing with kavod amet. He's dealing with fulfilling the promise of Yosef. Yehei ani. Everyone in Bnei Yisrael gets to be rich. But Moshe Rabbeinu, who's dealing with the bones of Yosef, it doesn't get to be rich. Chas v'chalila. Eten lo et hapsolet she'ashir. Right? He'll become rich from the psolet of the luchot. So what is this midrash saying? Why is the psolet? Why does Moshe merit getting rich from the psolet? I would argue, perhaps, all the version that we saw earlier about the sapphire stone and the esoteric knowledge on this. The reason Moshe merited getting rich was because he was all about Torah. That was who he was. He was Moshe Rabbeinu, and the message is that people who dedicate their lives to Torah, like it says in
Tana, you want to do a machloket?
No, it's not a machloket. It's two different ways to understand the midrash. So it's kind of like a machloket, but right, that this idea of the person should be like ol masa kashor kacham, whatever the phrase is, that a person should burden themselves with the ol shel Torah. That Moshe Rabbeinu was the epitome of that. He sacrificed himself for Torah. So a person who does that, he will have Oshir. Birkat Hashem ita Ashir, as Moshe Rabbeinu himself says. That's what this version of the midrash is perhaps teaching. But what is this version of Shemot Rabbah teaching? That if you're a person who doesn't chase after money, or doesn't invest in money, even when you're allowed to have that money, right? But it's not something that you're in a moment of opportunity to grab wealth. You're a person who's mitasek b'gmilut chasadim, a person who's mitasek b'kavod habriot, a person who's mitasek with ben adam l'chavero. That's a person who gets osher, right? So it could be that what Shemot Rabbah is extracting from this midrash is a different. It's the same idea about the psolet and the luchot, but it's a different emphasis on why a person merits wealth. It's not because a person is all about Torah and he's ben adam l'makom and he's always learning, but rather it's someone who's does not care about materialism. He's not obsessed with going and getting his wealth, but rather about being gomel chesed and doing things that are right by other people. So I thought that was kind of just to kind of conclude. Right, we didn't continue in the Iyun Yaakov, but he continues after he brought our attention to this entire connection between the end of Bava Kamma and this midrash about Moshe and the psolet and the carving. So the Iyun Yaakov goes and actually continues. We won't read inside. He talks about how, I said before, the Gemara in Sanhedrin, which has this case of the Mitzrim and the Chachamim in front of Alexander the Great, where the Egyptians bring the Jews to court to say, you have to give us back all the money that you took in Mitzrayim because you stole it. And the Jews say, we didn't steal it, it's for payment for the slavery. Alexander the Great is the judge in that case. It's a whole midrash over there. But he says, Bnei Yisrael, according to that, their whole taina was, we're entitled to this money because of the slavery that we endured. But Moshe Rabbeinu was never a slave. So maybe he didn't deserve the payment. It's not that he didn't deserve it, in the sense that he wasn't allowed to go take the payment. It would have been theft. So perhaps the fact that the Iyun Yaakov is making that connection between Moshe Rabbeinu carving the luchot, this Gemara here. One second, let me finish the sentence. Sorry. And Bnei Yisrael leaving Egypt means that maybe, because the Iyun Yaakov doesn't bring the source of his quoting the midrash about Moshe psolet shelcha. He just says it's tam. We see here 6 or 7 different versions spread throughout the midrashim. The only one I found that refers to Bnei Yisrael and leaving Egypt is the one in Shmuel Rabbah. So perhaps the Iyun Yaakov is explicitly making reference to that. Yes.
Is Aaron 4 years older than Moshe?
Yes.
Few things. Number one, let's start from Moshe's beginning.